In this video, we're going to talk about how to find the equation of a line from a graph. So in this case, you're going to be given a graph and you're going to find the equation of the line. Now, this is not going to be too big of a jump from what we've already done because we've already talked about equations in y equals mx plus b form. And the thing is that to write an equation, you're only going to need to find the slope and the y-intercept, and that's the only two pieces of information you need, and then you just plug them in and you have an equation. So you're basically going to look at a graph and you're going to ask yourself just a few questions, right? First, where does the line intersect the y-axis? Okay, now that's right, this is my graph. The line intersects the y-axis. It's right here, right? It's this point. Okay, it's this is the y-axis, that vertical line. And so that's the point where it intersects the y-axis, right? And whatever this is, whatever this value is right here, that's your b. Okay, now if it's negative, right, if it's down here, then it's going to be minus a number. If it's plus, it's going to be plus a number. Okay, so that's the first question you ask yourself. The next question you ask yourself, is the slope positive, negative, or zero? Okay, now we know positive slopes look like this, they slant up. Negative slopes look like this, and zero slopes look like this. Okay, now, if the slope is positive, that means your m is going to be positive. If the slope is negative, that means your slope is going to be negative. Now, if the slope is zero, this is a little tricky. This means you have a zero instead of m. And so think about what that means, right? That means that zero gets multiplied by x, which means like 0 times x is just 0. So this will end up being an equation that looks like y equals a number, right? Like whatever your y-intercept is, it'll just be y equals that number, right? So like, if here's my graph, and this is my line, right? Like, let's say this is 1, 2. Like, this line is just y equals 2, because it's y equals 0x plus 2, right? So just keep this in mind. This is one that kind of gets us tripped up sometimes. Okay, so once I know my y-intercept now, I know what b is. I know whether my slope's going to be positive or negative or 0. And then the final question you ask yourself is just, what's the rise over run? Right? You're going to find 2 points. You're going to find the rise over run, right? Can it be reduced? Make sure you reduce it. Okay, but this is going to get you your m, right? The answer to these questions. All right, so we're going to take a look at a couple graphs right now and then get a chance to actually kind of see these 3 steps in action. Let's use these notes to now take a look at a few examples. So here are my notes. Remember, step 1, just go ahead and find the y-intercept, right? That's that point where it hits the y-axis. Step 2, decide whether the slope is positive, negative, or 0. And step 3, actually find what the slope is by using rise over run. So let's take a look at our first graph. And now what I'm going to do is, look, I'm going to write y equals mx plus b. Why? Because then I just can think about one step at a time. So I notice my y-intercept, it's negative 2. I'm just going to write negative 2 by the b. So that step is done. Now my next step, remember, I'm going to look at, is the slope positive, negative, or 0? So I take a look at this slope. I see, oh, from left to right, that goes uphill. So that slope is going to be positive. And then I'm going to take a look. My third step is rise or run. So I'm going to find 2 points in the graph. I already found this one, and I see this one. So I'm going to count my rise. That's 6, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units long. And my run is 2, so my rise over run is 6 over 2. Now I can simplify that. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So then my slope is 3, and I already knew it was positive 3, right? So that step is done. And there's my equation, y equals 3x minus 2. Let's take a look at the next one. First step, take a look at my y-intercept. My y-intercept is right here, it's negative 3. Next step, take a look at whether my slope is positive, negative, or 0. In this case, I notice my slope is 0. That line is flat, so I don't have to do rise over run because it doesn't rise. There is no rise. Well, there's a rise. It's 0, right? So it's 0 over something, which is just 0. Now, when I write this, I don't, this is not my answer. Don't box this, right? Because 0 times x is 0. 0 times any number is 0. So this just becomes 0. And 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So I would just write this equation as y equals negative 3. Let's take a look at the next one. First step, notice my y-intercept. It is at 0. So I'm going to write plus 0 here. Now I'm going to look, I see that my slope is going uphill from left to right. So my slope is positive. And now I'm going to find my rise over run. I see another point right here. So my rise is 1 and my run is 3. So my rise over run, 1 over 3. Can that be reduced? No. So it's 1 over 3, x plus 0. Now, when I add 0, that doesn't actually do anything to a number, so I don't write it. So I just write y equals 1/3 x. And last one, step 1, notice my y-intercept. In this case, it's at positive 1. So I'm going to write plus 1. I notice that my slope is negative. It's going downhill from left to right. So I'm going to just make a note to myself that my slope will be negative. Let's find my rise and my run. I see one point here. I see another point right there. So I'm going to count. This is a rise of 2 and a run of 3. Can that be reduced? No. I know my slope is negative, so it's negative 2 over 3, x plus 1. And there we go.